In my previous video, we implemented pagination with a few additions, and this video is just going to go through some tidying up and also looking at some of the problems that we haven't looked at yet, which is firstly, if we click the delete button, there's no confirmation, and then if we're on a page in the middle of the range of pages and we click delete, it takes us straight back to page 1, which might confuse the user. With the pagination, the last link is supposed to disappear and the next link should stay visible and be disabled, but in this case it's around the wrong way. Also, when we start to look at returning the user to the correct page, we're going to run into an out of range request, so we're going to handle that as well. So let's get started. So let's firstly fix the little problems that came from copying and pasting something, into the wrong place. So there we go. So that fixes our problem of the wrong thing disappearing. And there was a couple of things inside this pagination sibling thing I wasn't happy with when I looked at the video again. And one of them is that I'm passing paging.page here to calc number, and then I'm referring to it sort of as a global variable here. So, and that's the same thing, so that can be fixed. Another issue with the compare number is, again, I'm using paging.page_count here, and it would probably be nicer if I passed that into the function. So like this, so page count, and then just used whatever we passed in, so we can again make that function a little bit more self-contained. So that tidies that up, and there's probably little mistakes like that all the way through my videos, so if you point them out, I'll know for next time to do it better. Alright, so that now moves us to, after fixing that, we can now move to providing a confirmation dialog, so some sort of extra security so that we don't give the person no option to avoid a mistake. So to do that, we're going to go to our actions component, which contains our delete button, and we've got an on before event that we can use, and we can just say, look, before you submit this, just run this confirm pop-up. It'll be just like the default CakePHP one looks like. So we can say const confirm equals, do you want to delete the, and then just pass in there like that, and that looks pretty good. Let's reload. So notice when we click delete, we've got the option to cancel, which is good, or we go OK. And then there's another usability issue here, that when we click cancel and go OK, it scrolls all the way back up to the top of the screen. So we can fix that as well in our delete link component here by typing in preserve scroll property. And let's reload, and then scroll right to the bottom and click on one of them and OK, and notice now that it doesn't scroll back to the top of the screen. So that's really nice usability win there. Another thing we're missing is, if we have a look at this button, we've got a delete class applied to this, and the purpose of that is so that I can get an icon, but unfortunately my icon's missing, so I'll just make a change, go into my CSS file here, find where that delete class is applied, and just add in the correct CSS selector to allow that to get an icon. Okay, so that's added some safety to our delete function. There's also a little bit of a ugliness here. We might change that while we're at it. This is the Bootstrap code for alerts. So I'm just going to update our flash message. Now, this clearly is very rudimentary, and you probably would want to make a lot more intelligence here to choose the specific type of alert that you want, but this is just for purposes of demonstration. We'll just make that a little prettier and go and reload, and now we should have a nice styled alert. Now this delete functionality, as we mentioned, when we click delete, it jumps back to page 1. So now we're going to make it not do that. It will go back to the page that you were on with the settings that you were on when you did the delete. So to do that, we go into our delete button, and we're going to add a query string to this URL that we can use in CakePHP. So I'm going to go const search string is going to be new URL search params, and window dot location dot search, and we add a question mark to denote a query string there, and then just add that there. So what that does when we reload and go to another page, maybe we select different paging here, we'll make sure we go to another page, and just hit inspect in the network tab and hit delete, and now we can see that it's passing through the query string to the CakePHP backend. So with that, we can then go to our controller and find our, I think delete query is a little bit lower here, delete query, and make a change to our redirect and say, okay, when you redirect, can you please grab the request and get all the query params and add them as a redirect. Now, I don't know why, but I added a 303 code to this redirect, but I'm just going to remove that here. So now let's see if how that works, and if it's created another problem. Okay, we go to our last here. We click on delete. That works fine, and it redirects back to the page it was on, 2395, and it does that quite well. Now we go right to our last page, and we delete our third last record's okay, our second last record's okay, but now watch what happens when we delete our last record on the last page. It throws a not found exception. So the cause of that is we're making an out of range page request, and so we're going to use the code here. It's under the pagination documentation to fix that. So I'm going to copy the try catch block out of that documentation, and the error's been thrown when we go to the index action. So we go to the index action, paste in our try catch block, wrap our paginate function that's creating a shipments paginated records in the try catch block, and then pull in our correct not found exception. Now the documentation says do something like redirecting to the first or last page, so we're going to redirect to the last page, and it shows us where to get that information to find the last page through that. We're already using that, so I'm just going to copy and paste this here, and then I'm going to say, okay, return a redirect, and the action is the same action as we're on, which is the index action, and then we want to add a page query string using the output from this failed pagination, or this out of bounds request, because that's telling us what the actual page count is now. So we've got the maximum page is in that page count array key, and we also want to make sure that what we also have is that we've got any query params that are there, we want them to be folded into this redirect as well, and it won't overwrite page because that was set first, and when you do this plus, anything that matches what came before won't be applied. So that is what we need to do there. So we'll go now to our last page again. So we're on our last page, 2397. We start deleting, works fine, but notice what happens when we delete the last record on the last page. It now just simply redirects us back to a correct last page, and we no longer get an out of range request exception thrown there. So that's something that is really nice to implement to stop the user being confused about where they were just as after they hit delete. So now we have done a fair bit just to fix up our usability there. Just one final thing which we can look at is the option of when we have a component. So at the moment we're in the dispatch view component, and we're just echoing the shipment data to the screen here, and we're using the layout that's the global default layout, but every now and then we might want to swap our layout out for just one component or one page, and this is how you do it. So we start with we're on the view page there at the moment, and we'll go to pages dispatch view, and at the moment this view is just doing an export default, but we're going to change this to be a little bit neater. It's got to have a separate export statement there so we can modify it a bit. So we're going to put that, and we get rid of that because it's alright. So there we go. So now when we want to override a layout for just one component, which is this view component, we can set view.layout here and then an arrow function and say, okay, taking this view page, instead of passing it to the default layout, pass it to another layout. So we need to create another layout here. So what I'm going to do is go copy and paste, and we'll call that the view layout, and we want to make a change here so it's really obvious. So we'll just say h1 view layout. So that'll tell us that yes, we definitely have changed the layout, and then we need to rename that, and we don't need that because it doesn't exist anymore, and there doesn't seem to be any more links available in this layout. So this is just a dummy layout, but now what we do, we say, okay, we pass this specific page to this specific layout, and we've overridden the global default layout, which is this layout here. Alright, now let's have a look at that and just refresh the page and see if that's what's happened. Yeah. So there we see that we've got nice control over the layout of the page. We can swap out layouts, make the changes just for one component if we want, and then we get all the nice to haves from Inertia, and just all you need to do is go to the documentation, and it's very clear as well. So I hope what we've covered there has been of use to someone.